Hello everyone, today I'm joined with a very special guest. You all probably know him, he makes content on Boruto, Naruto, and pretty much anything you would want to know about, but it's Naruto Explained.
Oh man, thanks for having me on here, man.
Yeah, it's great to have you here with us, bro. I know a lot of my subs watch you, I watch you too. Great content, keep it up, bro.
I appreciate it, man.
But ever since Two Blue Vortex, the new Boruto spinoff started, people have been talking about why Boruto is so cold and why the tone shift and why he's so much different than what we saw in chapter 80. So today we'll be taking a look at Boruto, but not only him, his father as well, and going over why they both had a bit of a tone shift, part 1 and 2, and what shapes them both as characters.
So, like the big thing when you start comparing Boruto and Naruto, you really have to start looking at their characters and see what it is that makes them tick. Like for instance, with Naruto's character, when we first get introduced to him, we see that there's this theme with Naruto's character for so many people to look at him and not even see him as a human. There's a dehumanization of Naruto's character that you're introduced to at the very beginning, where one of the teachers at the academy, one of the Jonin, Mizuki, is looking at him and he's like, "Hey, like Aruka feels this kind of way." Aruka also looks over at Naruto and he's saying like, "Hey, you can have the ramen, but like you got to pass the graduation exam, et cetera, et cetera." But when you get to Aruka's true feelings, he's grappling with it himself because he's trying not to view Naruto as being the nine-tailed fox that killed his parents. Yet at the same time, he still harbors that resentment, and it takes him working through his feelings to kind of acknowledge Naruto as actually being a human, being a Konoha shinobi. And Aruka wasn't the only one that felt this way. He had an entire village of people that were viewing Naruto in this manner. And so you would see Naruto where he's fighting for existence. He wants people to recognize him first as a human being and not as this mysterious nine-tailed fox creature. But then when he becomes a shinobi, it goes from trying to do pranks to get attention to trying to earn his way as a ninja and get that acknowledgement. That's the whole reason he wanted to be Hokage, because he wanted acknowledgement. He wanted to be seen as something other than being a Jinchuriki. And that's something super important.
Yeah. And the difference comes in with Boruto is that he already has all of this acknowledgement. He's already known by the village. He's beloved just by being the Hokage's son, and he's also a genius. So he's looked at as this academic prodigy, this prodigy in life because he's the Hokage's son. So his goal of becoming a Hokage and seeking the acknowledgement of the village isn't really there. That's why he first hates his father, because the workload that his father has to take on due to the burden of becoming Hokage leads him to kind of neglect his family. And Boruto is still a 12-year-old boy, so he doesn't really understand that this has to be done, this job has to be done with someone, and the whole village is essentially Naruto's family. Boruto then sees Sasuke as someone who's super cool, someone super edgy. He's known as the Hokage's rival. He's always away from the village, protecting it from the outside, and he wants to train with this guy to beat his father and show his father that, yeah, he's strong, pay attention to me, I'm this kid, right? So him being the sort of shadow Hokage, or the Hokage from outside the village, all spurs from the fact that he no longer wants this attention. He's had this attention from birth, and this is supposed to mirror what Naruto Explained said about Naruto, in that he seeked all of this attention. He didn't have any parents, he didn't have any friends, he didn't have any he was just some kid who was acting out and being bad because everyone looked at him as this sort of monster because he had the nine-tailed fox within him.
And see, like kind of piggybacking off of that too, like that's where it really becomes a really good contrast with Boruto and Naruto. Whereas Boruto is a genius, like what you see with Minato and with Itachi and with people like Neji and Sasuke. Naruto is somebody who he's had that strong internal drive for him, and he did want to be acknowledged, but he just sucked at so many different things, especially things that are related to like say building your yin chakra, which is like studying and meditation, anything to do with the mental aspect. Naruto, he still had to stumble and bumble his way through. So it's one of those things where it makes him a little bit more relatable, in the sense of most of us can relate to not being good at something, having to put in the reps in order to get to a point where we're good enough just to qualify for something. Whereas when you compare that with Boruto, Boruto's one of those characters where the playbook, he looks at it, he knows the whole playbook, he can audible and basically get the same result. And as Kishimoto even said when Boruto movie was coming out, it was one of those things for Boruto's character. They purposely went that direction with them because it allowed them to showcase a character who knows all the shortcuts. Because he's so smart, he looks at it and says, okay, if I gotta make a Rasengan, instead of going through step 1, 2, 3, I'll just go from step 1 to step 3 and skip step number 2. And when you see the anime, it's one of those things where Sasuke even tells him like, "Yeah, you're really good at lightning release, but you need to go back and learn the basics," because he skips over that stuff. Whereas with Naruto, he was so bad at everything, Naruto had to learn the basics. And that's part of the beauty for him because he wants to be acknowledged. He wants to have his dream acknowledged of being Hokage, but he has to work that much harder for it. And I think that's really why a lot of people kind of gravitate more towards to Naruto's character than Boruto's character because that relatability aspect.
Yes, but where I think Boruto also shows a bit of his relatability is with the whole family dynamic. Yeah, you relate to Naruto because he has to work hard. He's not some type of genius who just gets everything handed to him that can just skip steps like Boruto. He also doesn't have a family. He's essentially an orphan who's seeking the attention and love from everyone else. Most people in real life and most people nowadays especially, they don't really have the 1 or 2 family members or fuck that, get that part out, Jesus Christ. They don't really have that dynamic of having a father and mother or just a family that sits together, eats together, and loves each other all cohesive, right? You typically it's a broken family, or typically it's a family that have issues within itself, and the kid always feels like an outsider and always feels neglected. This is the part where people nowadays are supposed to relate to Boruto. So yeah, people getting on him for being a prodigy, I can understand that part, but people getting on him for thinking his father's neglecting him and not really understanding that this little kid just seeks the love of his father is kind of baffling. And like Naruto Explained said, yeah, Boruto can skip these steps, but Sasuke does just have to come in and remind him that, yeah, even though, you know, you're smart enough, you're genius enough to skip these steps and put a whole nature release onto your Rasengan, these steps are there for a reason. They're necessary. You have to go back and learn these. That's why Sasuke doesn't reject him. He just tells him, work on this. And Boruto, since he's kind of a spoiled brat at this point, kind of sees that as rejection and runs off.
And see, like just to build on two things that you were saying, like from the family aspect, that's super important. But also when you're talking about how Boris was already acknowledged, that's where you look at their two characters and you can start seeing the narrative. That's where you can start seeing the narrative's whole intentional decision to go this route because Naruto was dehumanized right up front. Boruto's story is him slowly being dehumanized because of what you see with the Karma Seal. And it's because at the time where he got the Karma Seal, that was when he finally started figuring out what type of a shinobi he wanted to be. Being a ninja was something that he thought that was just expected of him. The anime does a really good job of just showing how he doesn't really have a ninja way, and he gets questioned by Kakashi. He doesn't have a answer for why he wants to be a ninja. Sasuke asks him. Sasuke doesn't really get a ninja from board. Sasuke doesn't really get a answer from board. So he's like, "Oh, ninja way. That's something super old school. You know, never really thought about it." But after he gets to the conclusion of like, "I want to be just like Sasuke," that's where you see he's got that Karma Seal, and that starts his dehumanization. And when you look at the other thing that Troy says, where he talks about the family dynamic and how more people should relate to Boruto, I think people know that they relate to Boruto. Like most people, just keeping it a buck with you, like most people don't have a demon fox inside of them. They don't have everybody hating them. Like most people have a group of friends. Like even if it's just one person that is your day one, that's what you right there from the start. Naruto, when we first meet him in the manga, he don't got no friends. It's just literally him. Like I don't give a fuck what the anime does, where it shows like Shikamaru and Naruto and like they're like buddy. Like fuck that. Like in the manga, it's not like that, and it's one of those things where Naruto. Yes. And like when you look at that, I think people see Boruto and they see parts of themselves that they don't like. Like you said, like most people come from like a broken family, or they come from a situation where like one parent's working more than the other. I can say for me, like when I just sat down, I took my feelings out of it because I was one of the people when chapter 700 came out. I was like, man, this dude Boruto's like a Naruto clone. He's like, I'm gonna play pranks and I'm like the center of attention, blah. I was like, what the fuck is this bullshit? Like, I just read 700 chapters of this. Like, I don't want the same thing. And it's just like, you look at it now and how they made the whole thing of like making him more realistic to the modern day shonen fan, etc. Like, I think Kishimoto said that Boruto and Naruto's relationship mirrors that of him and his own child. But when you look at that, it becomes one of those situations where people see that Boruto has both parents, like a lot of people. Like I think statistically speaking, most people do have both parents, but because of how much people are working, one parent is gone more than the other. So they see how Boruto handles Naruto being gone. And they say, well, I wouldn't act like that. And it's like, okay, you're projecting how you would handle something and you're not suspending disbelief, which is what you're supposed to do with fiction. You're supposed to suspend disbelief. As a writer, you want to have a situation where you invoke those strong feelings. And if you can make the audience connect to the character, all the better. Like for me personally, I understood where Boruto was coming from very well because with Boruto, look at it from this perspective. He had a father who was always there at first before he became Hokage. And then he suddenly becomes Hokage and he's never there. Like for me personally, I had that situation with my mom where growing up, we didn't have a lot. We were on food stamps. My mom was trying to make it work on a teller salary back when tellers weren't getting paid like how they're getting paid now. And she was having to take care of like my grandmom and my sister and myself. And she would always be there like during certain times because she wasn't working as much as a teller. And then all of a sudden she becomes a bank manager and then she eventually gets up to where she's a regional VP. And like my mom was always working, always gone. And that led to me acting out and falling up behind some of my cousins. I shouldn't have been falling up behind doing things I shouldn't have done. But it's one of those things like I get where Boruto's coming from because I did shit to try and get my mom's attention just like Boruto does. And I think that you have some fans who will go through a similar thing with Boruto. And I think it's because Boruto holds up a mirror to him that a lot of that might be a reason why they look at him and they don't like what they see.
Yes, because another thing that Naruto Explained mentioned that I kind of want to grapple on is the aspect of them mirroring each other and how basically Boruto is slowly becoming dehumanized and Naruto is slowly building that respect from everyone. We see in part one when Naruto's during the Chunin exams, he's trying to rescue Sasuke and all of these, and he's forming these relationship bonds with Sakura, Kakashi, the other Konoha 11, and the other Chunin or Genin when they go to rescue Sasuke. They all are able to form a bond, work together, and actually become a team and actually love Naruto for once in his life. We see with something like Boruto, instead of Sasuke running away from the village and he chases him, Kawaki comes into them. They rescue Kawaki from this Orochimaru-esque villain, or Jigen in this instance, and Kawaki grows to love Boruto, but then ends up betraying Boruto, and Boruto gets everything taken away from him. So he's no longer bringing this Sasuke figure back home. This Sasuke figure is pushing him out of his home. That's why when we see them get this brotherly love, and Boruto with his inner demon, he's taking out Sasuke's Rinnegan, Kawaki sealing Naruto, Mitsuki no longer knows who Boruto is, and Ida and Damon basically came in the village and mind hacked everyone into forgetting Boruto and stealing his last name. That's supposed to mirror how Sasuke, when he left the village and left everything, he had friends coming to get him, but instead Sasuke is basically having these friends push him away. That's why it's like Kawaki is he's supposed to mirror Naruto and Boruto's supposed to mirror Sasuke, but the roles are reversed.
And see, what makes that even more beautiful is when you go back and you look at how Naruto uses like a lot of Asian concepts. That's the whole thing with yin and yang. So like Boruto is the opposite of his father. He completes the other thing. That's why he's purposely going through the opposite experience that Naruto went through, and Kawaki's going through the opposite experience that Naruto went through, or rather Sasuke, in the sense of, like you said, Sasuke had people trying to bring him into the village. Kawaki bring him back to the village, whereas with Kawaki's in a situation where he's brought in and he's getting everything that he ever wanted, and you can tell that his story is basically going to be the story of he was a boy who had nothing and gained everything, and then because he's never experienced love before and doesn't know how to handle it, he's going to slowly lose it, just as Boruto had everything and has lost it and is going to slowly reclaim it all. They're meant to go on opposite tracks, just like Naruto and Sasuke were, but just as Boruto looks up to Sasuke and is now understanding, okay, like I'm walking a different path than my dad, but I'm also walking a similar path as my teacher. You're seeing a similar thing with Kawaki. Kawaki could relate to Naruto because Kawaki is viewed as being less than human because he had the Karma Seal, but now he's also in a situation where he's experiencing the opposite side. Am I making sense on that part to you?
Yes. And what makes I think Kishimoto writing this dynamic, and what makes it better in Boruto that Sasuke and Naruto are now kind of absent or not as important in the story is, like we said during the video, they've already had their story, right? And if people were coming into this saying, oh, we've already seen Naruto and Sasuke, one of people's biggest complaints, even though they seem to love Naruto and Sasuke so much, is that the stories seem to have viewed them as too important. That's why at the beginning of Boruto Part 1, he says, this is my story, except for a little bit at the start. This is me and my father's. His father's story has concluded. That's why Boruto in Two Blue Vortex, he is now on a mission. He's alone, cold, strong, everything. And while Sasuke, even if you don't want to think he's dead or tree, even if he's alive, he's not on the level of the opponents now, so he can't even help Boruto in battles like they did versus Jigen. And the biggest kicker of it all is how when we met Naruto back in Part 1 and he was this giddy kid, right? He was bad, even though deep down he was depressed and very sad. And we meet him again in Shippuden, and he still has that, pretty laid back, carefree attitude until you get to the Pain arc. Because during the Pain arc, he has his teacher or mentor die, right? Then he has this whole talk with Pain and Nagato about like how cruel and evil the shinobi world is, and he gets to view all the things that are happening on the planet as actual bad, and he gets to view the actual nasty things that are happening underneath that optimistic facade that he's been having pretty much the whole show. That's why post Pain arc, you see the complete tone shift in Naruto. To where if you watch Naruto anime, yeah, the filler still views him as carefree, but in the manga, he's still business. He means business. He's pretty serious. He's not completely like cold-hearted like Sasuke, but he's pretty, it's pretty easy to tell he's much different than he was in early Part 1, right? He's even having panic attacks and dealing with these mental issues right on panel for us to see.
And just to build on what you're saying there, like when people say it's not that deep, that's like a common thing people say, it's not that deep, bro. They didn't think it out. Like literally when Kishimoto was talking about why he didn't reanimate Jiraiya during the Fourth Ninja War, the reason that he gave was that Jiraiya's death was meant to allow Naruto a open window into understanding Sasuke more. And like when you talk about that whole tonal shift that he undergoes, he needed to experience that in order to truly be able to connect with him. Because when you go back to volume, I think I know Part 1 ended in 27. I believe it's volume 25 around chapter 2, 13, 14, and 15, where when Sasuke gets that headband and he's telling Naruto like, hey, like I'm gonna put my headband on now, and we're gonna fight. And he talks about how high level shinobi can feel each other's emotions. Naruto's fist never reached Sasuke during that point. And when Naruto finally makes that shift in Part 2, that's exactly during the time where Sasuke was at a point where when Karin is sensing his chakras, she's like, oh my god, like his chakra's darker than the curse mark stage 2. Naruto needed to go through that in order to be able to resonate with him. And you see that start to come into fruition when they have that clash at the Five Kage Summit, and they're able to briefly go into that spiritual realm where they're able to talk to each other. That's your sign that like that was intentional. It needed to happen. And I think with Boruto, what we're seeing is Boruto needed to understand Kawaki from the sense of being an outsider. And I think we're building towards a similar moment with Boruto and Kawaki there.
Yeah, and what makes this even, more apparent with all the signs that Kishimoto is putting within the manga, Boruto in chapter 80 basically almost verbatim, repeats this line that happened in Naruto, right? You can't truly understand each other, and Naruto's fist not reaching Sasuke is because he said he's never truly understood Kawaki, right? And now he understands why Kawaki's doing the things he does, and he doesn't hate him. He doesn't want this to end in brother bloodshed. He doesn't want this to be a fight that ends all and kills each other, right? But with the people saying Kawaki's gonna die or Boruto's gonna die, I mean, they might, but as it says in chapter 80, that's most likely not gonna happen. And if you understood the goals and what Naruto represents as a show and series and what Boruto represents as a show and series, you wouldn't even want Kawaki to die. Most people, if not all people, can be redeemed, and most people, if not all people, can be understood. That's why him trying to understand Kawaki and save Kawaki is basically the entire premise of Two Blue Vortex. That's why when he comes to the village, yeah, Kawaki still wants to kill him, Kawaki wants to do this, but Boruto's not on that timing. He's trying to save the planet. If he truly wanted to kill Kawaki and do all of that, he would have just started a fight right there and saved the planet later. Because code seems to be no issue for Boruto at all. So people and also, what'd you say? My bad.
No, I cut you off, man. I can make this point later.
Okay, but yeah. So and people also want to say, well, if you say all that, why is there a big tone shift in Two Blue Vortex? Why is he now edgy? Why is he now all of this? I wouldn't even say he's edgy. He's simply down with the plan. Like someone who I would call edgy is, my favorite character in fiction, but Sasuke is edgy. But for right, his whole family died. He had to repeatedly watch their deaths hundreds of times, right? He has very well every right to be emotional and edgy per se, but Boruto is simply completing a plan. He had no way said anything edgy. All he did was reiterate a threat to Code that he actually made good on, that he can easily kill him. and he needs him to show him where the dimension is. That's the only way to get this information out of Code, is to make a threat and show him that this threat is real. Because people won't act if they feel that there's no danger. The fact that Code is now feeling danger and, you know, oh, I will die if I don't do this, that allows Boruto to thus save the planet from the Jubi that's basically about to take control of it and destroy the planet.
And see, when you're talking about people wanting Kawaki to die, like I think that that shows a gross misunderstanding. Again, I'm going to go back to Asian concepts because, like I've consistently said, like the story of Naruto, when you really sit down at it and look at it, if you have a deep understanding of Shinto mythology and the folklore, and then also when you start looking into other Asian concepts, you get a deep understanding of Naruto. But also when you start looking at stuff like the samurai elements, like Naruto's manga had a lot of samurai elements despite being a story about ninja. And the whole I'm pronouncing it wrong, it's Katale Uche. It's basically the art of blood revenge. It's the thing with the samurai where like the samurai like when you watch like a lot of those stories and read the stories, they talk about how when blood is shed from a family member, it's usually the youngest son who ends up taking the revenge. Well, when you look at the Kawaki and Boruto situation, Kawaki's not really done anything to warrant Sasuke, Boruto being a edgy character like Sasuke, where Sasuke was going after Itachi, and then it just kept morphing where it went from I'm going to kill Itachi because he destroyed my family to I'm going to destroy the village because the village is benefiting from Itachi's suffering and forcing Itachi to do what he's doing. When you look at Kawaki and Boruto, he hasn't checked off any of those boxes. What did he do? He stole away his dad and he stole away his mom. People say, well, he stole his life, but he didn't. That wasn't something Kawaki did intentionally. That was a perfect storm where you had Ada, who had that overpowered omnipotent Shinjutsu, and you had a super emotional Kawaki, and the Shinjutsu can only be triggered by Inosuke, and Kawaki just happens to be 100% super emotional, was able to trigger it. Boruto is smart enough to see those elements go on and understand, number one, it wasn't Kawaki's fault. He triggered it, so there is some responsibility for it, but it wasn't intentional. There was no malice. And then the other thing is, even though the world thinks that Naruto's dead, Boruto knows because Kawaki tells him in chapter, I think 78 or 79, that essentially they're sealed into the Daikokun dimension. They won't age, and that Boruto won't ever see them again. But Boruto has not been wronged by Kawaki to this point where he has to take his life. So when you see these people saying like, oh, Boruto's just being a bootleg Sasuke, that's a gross misunderstanding of where Boruto's character started at and how he got to where he's at now. And that's also showing that you don't understand Sasuke's character or his motivations, which that in itself is a whole nother topic in of itself.
Yeah. And something I kind of wanted to address right here, because people also just grossly misunderstand this and just don't understand why it is the way it is in chapter 1 and why Kawaki seems off still in Two Blue Vortex. Kawaki still goes to check on Naruto and Hinata. You can call it creepy, you can call it whatever, but he loved Naruto as a father. He loved Naruto the most in the world. And by extension, he loved the family that is Hinata and Naruto. All right, so him just going to check on them, he's still a kid. He still has all of these emotions. Yeah, he's just, maybe he goes to talk to them. Maybe he just goes in to just look at them, these familiar faces that he loved. And to speak on the jealousy point, he's clearly not jealous because he didn't even take on the mantle of being Himawari's brother. You know, he didn't take on the mantle of being the new Boruto. He is just now Kawaki. He even asked Himawari to not call him, you know, Oni-chan or Big Brother because he doesn't like the way that feels. It probably makes him feel dirty or makes him feel like just some jealous guy when that's not what he is. And Boruto in chapter 1 asks him, oh, Kawaki, I didn't think you'll go this far. So yeah, right now Kawaki's not evil. He's not anything. But that clearly changes within chapter 1 because Boruto, even though he's seen Kawaki do all of this throughout Boruto Part 1 and Two Blue Vortex, he is surprised that whatever Kawaki just did just happened. And Kawaki also deals with a lot of obsession, love, and mental problems. So maybe he just finally snapped and destroyed the village. Again, this is the story of two children who are basically having the weight of the world on their shoulders and on their mental scapes. So of course he's gonna crack eventually.
And see, when you talk about that, like that kind of that goes right back into the way that their characters are being charted. Kawaki is being charted as that character who he didn't have love, he got love, couldn't handle it, which led to the obsession that Amato and Shikamaru are talking about. And he thinks he's doing the right thing. In a lot of ways, he's more of a gray area character. He's not a evil character, but he's making all the wrong decisions. And because he's making those wrong, or he's making questionable decisions for potentially the right reasons, but because he's going about it the way that he has, it's going to cause him to lose it all. And so when you look at Boruto telling Kawaki, was this the only possible outcome? You can tell it goes back to what you said, which is that Boruto's trying to save Kawaki from himself to an extent.
Yeah. So when looking at Naruto and Boruto, both of their growths alongside each other, you start to see there's very many similarities. They're just flipped on their head, right? It's almost like Kishimoto did this intentionally. That's why I always see when people doubt the growth of people like Kawaki and Boruto specifically, it's always kind of takes me back and like, well, do you really understand Naruto and Sasuke? Do you really understand Naruto? Or are you just, blindly hating on Boruto like many people like to do, right? So that's why even, most haters I've seen nowadays, they can't really deny anymore the character that is Kawaki or Boruto. Even in the grand scheme of Naruto characters, they always say, oh, they're top 5, they're top 10. That's because they're written to mirror your favorite two characters, Naruto and Sasuke. If you like Naruto and Sasuke, you'll almost definitely like the growth of Boruto and Kawaki.
And see, if you're somebody that is a super whole, I call it nostalgia glasses. If you're somebody that has nostalgia glasses for the Naruto franchise, if you just sit down and you just look at Boruto's character, it's very interesting when you look at it, because Boruto starts out as somebody, he takes on the shinobi stuff because he thinks that that's what he wants, but he doesn't really know what a ninja is. And Boruto's story in part 1, it isn't just him losing everything. It's also, and it isn't just him losing his humanity in the sense of he's becoming an Otsutsuki on a genetic level, but it's also him understanding what it means to be a shinobi. That's why him getting killed in chapter 66, that's why it was so big, because it was the culmination of all those events to essentially show him what it means to be a ninja. A ninja is a tool, like Zabuza tells us in the Land of Waves arc, a tool that's meant to be discarded. And Boruto just willingly discards his life, thinking that he's going to protect the village that way. That moment right there should have been the moment where, even if you're like the staunchest Boruto hater, you should have grown a lot more respect for the character. But there's still people who like to downplay it. Well, he got brought back to life. He got brought back to life, but it came at an expense. Him and Momoshiki, he's constantly got that dude in his head gaslighting him now. And I think that that's a fair trade-off. Well, anytime you bring characters back from dead and etc., there should be some type of a payoff. Even with the Renny Rebirth, the data book tells you that it comes at the expense of the user's life. Chio's jutsu to bring back guard comes at the expense of the user's life. Reaper Death Seal to unseal somebody out of it, like the person ends up giving their life unless you have a cheat code like Orochimaru did. Like, those are all things that kind of show that, like, Boruto, his experiences, like Troy was saying, it pulls on stuff from Naruto. So if you love Naruto as much as you say you do, you should look at how we got to this Boruto we got now, and you should have a deep appreciation for it because it mirrors.
One of the last things that kind of mirror this Naruto, Sasuke, Kawaki, and Boruto dynamic is how in Naruto, people always say, oh, we saw him train for everything, Boruto, he just gets everything handed to him. That's not really true, because we see Kawaki, the person who's supposed to mirror Naruto, he has to learn how to use ninjutsu. He has to learn to actually mold chakra and not just use scientific ninja tools to learn fire style and shadow clone jutsu. The same we see Naruto train for the Rasen Shuriken and, things of that nature. But Boruto, someone supposed to mirror Sasuke, we also see him train, but like Sasuke did, he learned the fire style within a week. He learned the Chidori in a few days. We see all that off screen. But Boruto, he learns the Rasengan Uzuhiko. We don't see how that happened. He does the nature release Rasengan, almost inherently by himself. No, we don't really see that happen. We don't really see his Rasengan training that much. So it's kind of playing on the same concepts that we already saw within Naruto. So it's kind of hypocritical of everyone to be like, oh, this happened in Naruto, this didn't happen to Boruto. Yes, it did. You just didn't pay attention to it.
Yeah, hey, look, like it's one more thing you can say with that too, right? Like, still being a sequel to Naruto, right? Like, it basically took the Star Wars approach. Like, George Lucas has that expression that it rhymes, where like you see episode 1 and then you can see some of the same story beats in episode 3, and do the same thing with 2 and 4 and with 3 and 6. You're seeing the same thing. It still rhymes.
Yep.
It's just that it's flipped on its head because Naruto is the yang to Boruto's yin. Kawaki is the yin to Sasuke's yang. Like, they flip everything over on their head. I mean, it's the same shit.
Yeah, it's genius in my opinion, bro. I don't see why people hate it. But with that being said, though, this has really just been a growth analysis, to kind of talk about parallels between Naruto and Boruto. If you haven't already, check out Naruto Explained. His channel will be linked in the description. You want to say anything?
Oh yeah, and I thought you were still going.
Nah.
Hey man, thank you for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure. I cannot wait to see what's going going on with your channel because you got next. You one of the ones that's coming up. You got next, man. Like we're gonna look up in 18 months. Troy gonna be sitting up here at 100,000
Yes,
subscribers.
sir.
I'm
Yes,
calling it
sir.
now.
Hopefully, bro. Hopefully. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and have a nice day.